Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I feel like I've been having a lot more connection with my listeners through the Q&As and polls. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Hi, I'm Father Daniel Duplantis, a Catholic priest, martial artist, and host of the Karate Priest podcast. Have you ever wondered what the church teaches about different topics? Are you a martial arts enthusiast or just someone who wants to learn more about martial arts? I'd like to invite you to join me and many guests on my podcast as we cover topics of faith, everyday living, and martial arts on the Karate Priest podcast.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Selling a little or a lot? Do your thing however you cha-ching with Shopify, the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/offer23.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this bonus episode. If you guys are listening on the podcast, you guys know that season 3 has already ended, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a bridge between the gap of season 3 and season 4 that's coming out in September. So we decided to do a little bonus episode. And then if you're watching on YouTube, this is just a bonus episode for you guys. So today I have a special guest with me. We have Savannah Dudzik.
Hello, everyone. It's been a second.
I know, it's been like forever trying to work things out logistically on my end. Savannah's always open to stuff. I've always been busy.
Yeah, but still, I mean, we used to do so much together like last year and the year before. And then when you move across the country, you kind of like, we didn't lose touch. Like we were still talking every once in a while, but it's just a whole different ball game. We can't just like meet up for coffee and say, oh, hey, we're going to record a YouTube video now.
Yeah, and I think right, because I think that's the transition that really was the struggle, because we were so used to like every single Sunday or every month or two having something
all the time.
And then when you don't have that, like you forget to text, or if you try to call, like it's never a good time, and it's because work hours and stuff. So yeah, I'm glad that we're finally getting back into the swing of things, because by the title of this episode, people know it's about the 1-year anniversary of overturning Roe versus Wade. I guess, but first, did you want to introduce yourself for those that might not be familiar with you?
Yeah, so since Amber has just become famous in my absence, I will introduce myself for those who don't know me.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm Savannah, and Amber and I have known each other for probably 5-6 years now, something around there.
Yeah.
We met on a March for Life to DC. That's where we met, right?
20, so like 3.5 years.
Okay, so maybe not that long.
But it feels like that long.
We met on the March for Life to Washington, D.C., and we just kind of completely kept in touch because we were doing very similar things in the Chicagoland area during the same time. And when I lived in Chicago, I worked for Illinois Right to Life. I worked in communication. So I was very involved in the pro-life sphere, and then Amber was building her Catholic reach. And so we would like tag team on things. We go to banquets together. We go to press conferences together. We go to events together. We did a lot of stuff when the Latin Mass was banned in Chicago. And so then I moved to Florida and I started working for Live Action. I work for Culture of Life Fashion now, and I have a podcast. So we've just kind of been in similar spheres, not quite the same, but similar spheres for a couple years now. And Amber's just a really good friend as well. So we are friends as well.
Yeah, that helps. The friendship part helps a little bit.
For sure. It's really nice when you have people, because obviously, and I'm sure you feel the same way, there's so many people in these spheres, and there's so many good people in these spheres, but the people that you actually know personally, it's a lot easier to work with, because you can be like, hey, today doesn't work. Like, it just went to a mess, and we're going to do it tomorrow. Whereas if you did that with someone you weren't so personal with, they'd be like, oh, she's unreliable, you know?
Yeah.
So it's much easier to work around life stuff, and we all have life stuff, especially those of us in our early 20s.
Oh yeah.
It's
I know. We literally tried filming this podcast twice. So
yeah,
this is the second time and it's
now,
succeeding, but you know.
And we're good. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, yeah, it's just so interesting, especially when you're in the sphere and we're so young. I feel like there's so many more experienced older people that are kind of intimidating, and they don't mean to be. It's just automatically like they've been doing this for so long. Like, you know, in your realm, like Abby Johnson, Lila Rose. In my realm, people that I don't mainly men. I mean,
mainly men. Yeah, I mean,
when
you have decades of experience on us, you know, obviously you're going to be more knowledgeable than us. But the thing that I've found with a lot of older people is that they want young people, you know, they want young people to take their place. It's just how exactly they transfer it over. You know what I mean? It's just like a transferring the baton over to us.
Right. So. And it's hard to find people that are, you know, willing to do that and train the younger people. Right. I mean, maybe not as much in the pro-life world, but in the Catholic world, it's like you really have to learn your own stuff. Nobody's going to show you how to do it.
Right.
And also most of the Catholic stuff, it's based off your own experience, you know, in the sense of testimonies. Like most of my ministry was based off my own testimony.
Right.
And nobody can be like, oh, that's wrong, you know. But if you start teaching about apologetics, then they're just like, what? They're just like, I don't think you got that right. You know, you have to really be on top of it.
Really be on top of it, yeah. For sure.
But anyways, so getting into our topic today. So basically, this is going to be a podcast / video about the overturning of Roe versus Wade, because it is officially the year anniversary when this podcast comes out. And so, Savannah, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, what was it like on that year? Or that day?
It's the year anniversary, and it's crazy to me that I'm saying, like, we started talking a couple months ago about how, it's going to be the year anniversary of Roe v. Wade. And it really didn't hit me, because it's been a year, right? Since the Supreme Court has said that legal protection, that states can enact laws that will give the preborn legal protection. But there was so much leading up to the overturning of Roe v. Wade that it really didn't seem real. Last year, there was so much turmoil in the pro-abortion movement. There are so many things, so many crazy things that they did. They were protesting outside of Supreme Court Justice's house. That is incredibly unprecedented. The decision was literally leaked. That should never happen in the United States. And so a year from now, looking back on the literal war that we had to go through to get to this decision, which should have, Roe v. Wade should have never been passed in the first place. The turmoil that we had to go through, it makes me kind of proud of all the pro-life leaders who stood their ground. This was a time when we really could have backed down. We could have said, okay, Supreme Court, just do what you want. This is too much for us. People were getting hate mail. People were getting hate emails. People were getting people showing up to their houses. Some large pro-life leaders had to literally move because they were getting threatened. This should never happen at the level of the Supreme Court, which is supposed to be the most unbiased, court in America. So looking back on that kind of, and I remember, I don't know, Amber, if like we talked about it the whole time, because I was in the process of moving as well.
Yeah.
So it's also a little bit like, I'm moving to Florida and like, this is all happening and all this stuff. But a year from now, there's a lot of people asking, and I'm already getting media requests, what is the pro-life movement doing? Like, what is our goal now? Because after Roe, there were a lot of people who were worried that the pro-life movement was just going to stop, that we were going to stop what we were doing and just kind of like give up. And that's the opposite of what happened. We grew exponentially, and we are continuing to face. And honestly, now there's a war involving chemical abortion, right? They're trying to make chemical abortion not only easy access, but access for anyone at any time, anywhere. They're making comedy skits about it. So we really just had to ramp up our goals and our prerogatives even more. But the question that a lot of people ask is, okay, what's the next step? Like, I know all the states are doing different things, but like, what do you want? And we released a lot of pro-life groups, many of the pro-life groups in America released a statement together. And maybe a little later, I'll read a few lines in the statement. And we're pushing for equal protection. We want equal protection for all of the preborn. And that is kind of, there's been a lot of pushback on that, because that's saying we want abortion illegal everywhere across America. And that's kind of obvious when you think, oh yeah, you're pro-life, like you want abortion illegal. But there's been a lot of incremental steps, and we're going to continue to use those incremental steps. But the ultimate goal is for abortion to be illegal. So Roe v. Wade being overturned was literally a stepping stone. That's all it was. It was a huge victory, but it was literally just a stepping stone to get to our end goal, which is that all preborn humans have equal protection in the United States.
Right. And I remember that day, because I do remember, I think.
Now, what were you doing on that day, Amber?
I was pet sitting.
You were doing what?
I was pet sitting. I was doing the exact same thing I was doing since yesterday. So on the first day I started pet sitting, that was the overturning of Roe versus Wade.
Oh my gosh.
And it was also the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart.
Right.
If you remember
that's
that.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. I remember my priest told me after everything was crazy when it was overturned. I was trying to get a press release out, all this stuff. And I saw a text from him, and he was like, Roe v. Wade was overturned while I was celebrating mass. Like, oh, gives me chills still.
So good. And it's so true. And we have to understand that there is a religious component to it. I mean, you don't have to be Catholic to be pro-life, but you do have to be pro-life to be Catholic. Yes. And so when that happened, I was just floored. It was not what I was expecting, because everyone was saying, because it got leaked, all the, the court justices, they were going to change their decision because of all the threats and everything that was going on. And when they didn't, I was just like, yes, finally, something we can work with, something that was literally based off a lie has officially been rebutted and taken down. And so that has just been such a blessing to our nation. And it's given us more power, to be able to just kind of start weeding it out even further and get to the root. And so many Planned Parenthoods have closed. There's just been a increase of blessings, I think, since then.
And I don't know what the numbers are right now, but as of December, there were an estimated 10,000, I think it was 10 million lives that were saved in the U.S.
Really?
I believe. I'm not positive. We can keep talking, and I'll have to look up that number, but this was as of December.
Okay, I was going to say, because, I mean, that would, with how many abortions they perform every single day, that number would not surprise me, because there's
an estimated 2,000 abortions, more than 2,000 abortions per day.
Isn't it 2,800 something?
Yeah.
It's
2383. Yeah.
23. Yeah. It's that's insane. How do we allow this?
There were 32,000 fewer legal abortions in the 6 months after adopts. That's just 6 months. So now, it's what, 64,000? These are a lot. And I was watching some war movie last night with my boyfriend. I do not watch war movies on my own. Not my choice in movie. But I was thinking, because he said something. He's like, can you believe that that they did that? I think it was World War II. I don't remember. I was kind of falling asleep, but he was like, can you believe that they allowed this to happen? And whenever somebody says that about a previous historic happening, whenever somebody says that, I'm like, I think, decades from now, we're going to have movies on abortion, and our children are going to say, I can't believe that they did that. But it's not killing innocent, or the war movies, it's not necessarily killing innocent people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Holocaust, of course, was killing innocent people. But even then, it was nothing near the magnitude of killing 2,000 children every day. Like I really don't think we can comprehend it. I really don't think that even us in the pro-life movement, maybe especially us, because sometimes we're desensitized to it, especially when it's our job. We can't comprehend the fact that really, I mean, really there's nothing else we should be doing with our lives. Not everyone is called to work full time in this, but every opportunity you get, every opportunity you get to talk about this, to say something, to open up the doors to conversations. That's why, like, people always say, "Oh, Savannah, you're a walking billboard for the pro-life movement." Like, even today, like, I'm wearing my Smile and Protect Life.
Oh yeah, I got mine too.
Oh my gosh, I love yours. Oh, I love that one. That's the Illinois Right to Life shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I have that same one. But
really cute.
People say that, and I'm like, well, I mean, you have to be like, that's the least I can do. There's legal killing of 2,000 people every day in the U.S. Like, blows my mind how you could just not care about that. So anyway.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And definitely, for lack of a better term, we need more Gerber babies, for the pro-life movement. More people where, like, you see them and you're like, oh, they're pro-life, but it also means you have a target on your back.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
It's like, how do you deal with, how do you deal with feeling as though you have that target on your back? Because I wore this Illinois needs more pro-life men, and I didn't even know I was wearing it, but I just
sometimes that happens. That happened to me last night when I went to Pilates, and I was like, oh crap, I'm wearing a bright pink pro-life shirt, and none of them are pro-life. Anyway, go ahead.
Yep. No, it's true. And like, that was the thing, and I got such weird looks when I went for a walk, and I was like, you know what, mind your business. But also like, they genuinely were just like, this is weird, because it's a very liberal area, Chicago in general is, but especially the suburbs. And it was just odd. So how do you deal with that? Because you're out there, like, you are on the sidewalks and stuff.
Yeah, it was I never really had an issue growing up. Like, I was always pretty outspoken about it. And honestly, even in high school, I went to a public high school. People didn't agree with me. But the issue really started when the year before Roe was going to be overturned, and when Roe was overturned. And it was especially hard for me because I moved. I moved to a new place. I moved to Florida, and people were like, what do you do for work? Like, oh, Savannah, like, nice to meet you. You moved down here. I was meeting some of my friends' friends, and it's like, oh, I work full-time in the pro-life movement. Like, I'm going to DC this week because Roe's overturned, It's not necessarily something that you can just be like, oh, I work in finance, or, oh, I could just say I work in marketing, but that's kind of a cop-out, I think. So immediately when I moved down here, it was a super tension-filled time in our country. And I was working in a job that was, literally a target. And so it was difficult when I met people, because I really wanted to just say, oh, I work in marketing. Like, what marketing organization do you work for? Oh, like a human rights activist organization, right? But I knew that this is also the time, this was, and this still is also the time when people are the most ready to hear about it, the most interested in it. It's a topic at dinner tables where it wasn't before 2-3 years ago. So I definitely tried my best, and I was not always perfect at it, but I tried my best to, say who I was and what I was doing and talk to people about it. And of course I got hate, but honestly, we get hate, obviously, but I think that in person, and I don't know if you've experienced this before, Amber, in your DMs, you'll get hate all the time. Yeah. But in person, people kind of respect you, even if they don't agree with you, they respect you because you're standing for something. And that's the experience that I've had when I'm in person with people, and, I say what I do, sometimes they'll do a double take, but then they'll be like, oh, she stands for something. That's kind of cool. That's kind of something rare in our world right now. So I really had some good experiences when I moved down here, especially, I mean, there was even one time over the summer when I got 1972 to 2022 tattooed on my arm right after Roe v. Wade was overturned. And I went on, like, a lot of boats that summer with friends of friends, all this stuff. And so I would have, my arm would be out, right? And they'd see this large lettering, and a lot of people thought it was a birth date or a death date. Well, when I explained it to them, these people on the boats, a lot of them were not conservative, Catholic, pro-life, right? They're just crazy, whatever, random people. Not random people. I knew a lot of them, but some of them I didn't know. Some of them were friends of friends. And I had a few really good conversations on those boats. I remember one I had with this girl. She was about my age, super liberal, like ultra liberal, um, to the extent that you can imagine. And you know, she was just like, "Well, you're a woman. Like, why are you pro-life? That just seems like that doesn't make any sense." And I explained to her about, you know, and she was asking all these questions about, well, what do pro-lifers do for kids after they're born? Why is this so important? Like, isn't this men controlling you? And I really explained to her how, you know, abortion is actually, and Live Action has a great satire video on this. And we're going to do some more in DC this week. But abortion is actually benefits men. It really benefits. It's a tool of the patriarchy, and it's a tool used to control women and for men to not have responsibility because they won't have to pay child support. I explained to her stuff like that, and she didn't change her mind, but her mind was kind of blown. She was like, she literally told me, she was like, I didn't know any of this. Like, I thought the pro-life movement was just a bunch of old men, you know? And so it just shows how much like spreading knowledge and spreading the truth can have an effect on our world in everyday conversations. You don't have to go out to the front of the Supreme Court. You have to do it in your neighborhood, you know? And I mean, Amber, I know it's hard for you as well, probably a lot harder for you up there than it is down here. And I know it was for me because I mean, you live in the suburbs of Chicago. People are absolutely not willing.
It's insane. It's insane what people do here. Like the amount of violence that happens so close to Chicago, in the suburbs. There was a shooting that just happened like a couple days ago down the street from us. And it's just, you know, I feel like Florida, you definitely have that to an extent, like not that part, but like you have the liberals.
Oh, of course, right.
But then for the most part, Florida's a very red state. You know, it's very supportive of these things. And living in a blue state that is so violent, I'd like to use that term because it is. It is very hard, you know, to be pro-life in a very violent state, you know, and that's for any blue state anywhere. And some red states are like that as well. But yeah, I can definitely tell the differences between when I go to like a place that's very conservative and like, you know, red versus a blue state. It's like you're more bold about your views and you can talk about these things. But when you're near Chicago, big cities, New York, Seattle, like any of those areas, you have to really be careful, like who you talk to and what you say to them regarding your views, because in those situations, you probably would put a target on your back if somebody doesn't agree with you. For sure. I mean, I agree with you. And I think that it's definitely a lot harder in Chicago in those areas. But I also think that living in Florida for like a year now has made me a lot more confident, I guess, in speaking about it. And so when I do go to these states, yes, I'm probably putting a target on my back, you know, but there are, and I mean, I will just say this outright. Like, I think that there are some things worth dying for. And I'm not saying that I'm going to die for the pro-life movement, but I'm saying that kind of in a figurative sense. There are some things worth putting a target on your back for, you know. I would rather put a target on my back and speak up in the middle of Chicago to a group of dozens and dozens of people about this and then have them be angry at me than not say anything and potentially not save a couple lives, you know? I think that one of the biggest things in the pro-life movement now, and after this, I want to get up. I want to read something from the big press release that all these pro-life organizations put out. But one of the biggest things to remember and to kind of think about is the value of one human life, you know, and especially if you're Christian or Catholic, you know, this means even more to you. You have the potential to, even if you just save one life, you know, that's one life for eternity. That's one life that's gonna, you know, hopefully thank you when you get to the gates of heaven. And so it's like, what sacrifices are you taking in your life? One of our great writers at Live Action was saying on one of our meetings yesterday, she was saying, how well do you sleep at night? You know, how well do you sleep at night? Do you sleep knowing that you did everything that you can to protect the preborn that day? Or do you say, oh, like, I'm just, you know, gonna take a few hours off, you know, I'm gonna take a few hours to myself. Not that you shouldn't take time to yourself, but in every little
aspect of your life, there's ways to help save the preborn. And it takes courage, and it also takes knowledge. Like, you really have to be knowledgeable on this in order to talk about it. Otherwise, you're just going to make a fool of yourself, honestly. And I've done that plenty of times. I've gotten into interviews that I really shouldn't have been in, and then I've been like, I'm just going to change the subject because I don't know how to answer this. But yeah, it's just, having a good relationship with God is first and foremost. I could not do this if I didn't have a good relationship with God. And I'm sure, Amber, you feel the same exact way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there are so many people we wouldn't have today if people did not advocate for pro-life stuff. There's so many celebrities that were going to be aborted. I mean, there's somebody even on, what was that? I forget. She's pretty popular nowadays. I forget her name. What?
There's so many people.
I forget, but the point is that there are so many people, like, had they actually gotten an abortion, we wouldn't have Justin Bieber because his mom would have been aborted. We would have, there's just so many people we would have lost, and we do lose every single day to abortion. Like,
right.
Who else are we losing, that never got a chance to make their mark on the world?
Right.
And I think that's the hardest part. And I also think that we do have a due diligence to stand up and advocate for abortion in these blue states, because who else is going to do it? Yeah, it's a primarily blue state, and there's going to be liberals everywhere. There's going to be people who are conservative and support abortion. There's going to be a bunch of different things, but we still have a duty, like you said, like, to stand up in a crowd and be like, I'm going to save a life, even if it means putting a target on your back. And I think that is something we need to take into account. Like, yes, be safe about it, because
don't be dumb about it. Don't be dumb. Go with a group of people, if you have, if you're near a police station, that's wonderful. Like, don't be dumb about it. I'm not saying put yourself in your harm's way on purpose, but when you have the facts and the knowledge, go out and talk to people on the streets. Right now in Florida, we're fighting something that's crazy. So, and I just learned more about it yesterday, but so in Florida, it's a pretty red state, but in being so, there's a lot of targets on our back for people, for people who are leaning towards the more blue state attitude, to bring people in from different states and literally try to corrupt our state. So anyway, there's a constitutional amendment that they're trying to pass, which would make it so that we can't pass any abortion bans. It would make abortion legal up until 26 weeks, which is literally like all abortions almost. Yeah. So what they're doing is, and I just learned the details of this yesterday, and it blows my mind. They're paying people from different states $50 an hour to come down here. They're flying them down here to come down here and have people sign a petition. And there's like so many of them. Like, think about if you were pro-abortion, even if you weren't, if you were just neutral and you got told, I'll fly you to Florida, right? A very desirable state to go to.
Yeah.
Pay you $50 an hour. All you have to do is stand on the street and ask people to sign this petition. Nobody knows what they're doing. I've talked to so many people out there. Nobody knows what they're signing. They say, oh, it's a petition for women's rights. Oh, it's a petition so that women won't die from pregnancy. I'm like, do you know what you're talking about? So we have to be careful. Like, this stuff is coming. So that's the thing. This year has been the busiest year in the pro-life movement. It has been the most activism has been required. The most new things have been popping out. I just want to read one little part from this. It's published on the National Review, and it's basically a statement of because a lot of people are like, what's the pro-life movement doing? What's their next step? The title of it is The Pro-Life Movement Should Follow Its North Star, Equal Protection. North Star meaning this is what's leading us. So I'll just read the beginning. For nearly 50 years, the pro-life movement worked tirelessly to overturn Roe v. Wade, the 1973 Supreme Court ruling that prohibited states from protecting unborn children from the lethal violence of abortion. Millions prayed, marched, petitioned, voted, and made their voices heard to correct a grievous constitutional error. In 2022, those efforts achieved success. Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization was a generational win, an answer to prayer, and a monumental political and legal achievement. Now that Roe is gone, the pro-life movement must direct its effort to achieve our ultimate end goal, ending abortion by ensuring equal protection for children in the womb. To be pro-life is to affirm that the lives of innocent human beings deserve legal protection from violence both before and after birth. There can be no distinction between someone's biological humanity and his or her legal personhood. All human beings are a person. There are no classes of subpersonal human beings. The very idea of a human being who is relegated to the status of a non-person is a moral atrocity. From the earliest embryonic stage to the very end of life, each and every human being is a person and a bearer of the fundamental dignity and unalienable right to life. So there's a little more after that, but I think that it's really good that, and there's a lot of pro-life organizations that side on to this. Live Action, and along with like honestly most of the other pro-life organizations in America. And I think it's really good that we have a unifying effort, that our end goal is very clear. We don't just want to minimize abortion. We want to make abortion absolutely illegal because we don't think that you can separate being a human from being a person. Every time we've done that in history, something's
gone wrong.
So yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, I'm really excited. We're having, well, I guess the day that this comes out, we will be in DC. Many of the pro-life generation, hundreds and hundreds of us, will be having a press conference. We're saying we're not backing down. Like, Roe is over, but that doesn't mean we're gone. There's going to be a huge women's march that we're going to be protesting because, they're going to be quote unquote women's march. They're going to be marching for the right to kill their child. And yeah, it's a really exciting time. I feel like, Amber, we live in such exciting times.
We do. And it's so crazy
because they're crazy, but we're made for a time like this.
I agree. As Saint Joan of Arc who said that? You were made for times such as these.
Said that. It's in Esther too. Amber,
Esther.
Did you think getting into being a Catholic communicator that it would be during these times?
You know what? I don't know what I expected, but when I became a Catholic communicator when COVID started, I was just like, oh.
You're like, I'm getting myself into a whole different ballgame here.
Yeah, and also the fact that when all of this did originally start, I was not educated in almost anything. I just was sharing my testimony.
You're just passionate about it, yeah.
Yeah, but then the more people would ask questions, the more I would have to research, and then it turned into this Catholic communicator thing. People wanted to start hearing my story, and it started inspiring a lot of people who felt the same thing. They fell away from the faith and then they came back. It could be as vague as that, and it connects, it resonates with them. And so even in like the pro-life movement and things like that, the pro-life movement is huge in, Catholicism. It's a huge part of what we believe as Catholics, that every human life has dignity and has a soul, and that's worth protecting.
Right.
And so it's a huge part of being Catholic is being pro-life. And so that's how we kind of got connected, through 2020 March for Life.
Yeah.
And everybody got sick on that trip. It was great. I think everybody got COVID.
Crazy. Honestly, right, because was that right before COVID? No.
Yeah, the first outbreak was in DC, and we all got sick on the
That wasn't the year before COVID? That was the year of COVID? Oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah, because it didn't come out until March 2020.
Right. Okay.
Well, at least in the United States. Yeah, and so, I think we all had COVID, which was
crazy. I forgot that was that year, but yeah, I mean, we're like, whenever anyone's like, I hate when people say there's this trend on Instagram that is cool. I mean, I like the trend. Like, I would make a video of it, but I don't like the premise of it. It's like, it's kind of old now. It's kind of a couple months old, but it's like, I wasn't born for this time, like I was born to live, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? They're like, I was born to live in the 1800s, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Like, yes. Okay. Like, I would love living then too, but that's denying, like, God put you in this time for a reason. God doesn't make mistakes. God knows what's going to happen. He put you in this time for a reason. We were all of us who are here, we're born for this time, Yeah.
I think mainly though is it's like people don't understand God, and they don't believe in him. And so they think that the universe made a mistake.
Right.
And it's like, sweetie, no.
Not the universe. You're God.
The man who, like, the person who created the universe does not make mistakes. Right. But no, yeah. So it's just been such a crazy journey. And yeah, I've witnessed so many trends on Reels and TikTok. And I mean, I've been banned on TikTok for a while now. So it's been like a year and a couple months. But the main thing being is that, people, this is a very godless society. And that's one of the reasons abortion is so prominent these days
Right.
is, it's just it's so sad to see. But I think with people like you in the pro-life movement and who you're working with and my group of people in Catholicism and things, and we're all working for a greater good. And I think we will reach there hopefully for our kids' generation or their kids' generation.
Yeah. I know I have a lot of hope. I think all of us in the pro-life movement have a lot of hope right now. There's a lot of bad things going on, but there are a lot of good people standing up. There are a lot of people who are neutral, who were neutral before last year, who are standing up. So that's a really amazing thing.
Yes, no, 100%. I completely agree. Let's get into some questions. Are you ready for some questions?
Yes, I am.
Okay. How do I deal with bullying and ridicule in high school for being pro-life?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. There's not one good answer for this, for bullying and ridicule at any point in your life, but especially in high school, because in high school, at least for me, high school was the time when I wanted to be the most accepted. Like, you will never want to be accepted like you do in high school any other time in your life. So I think, one, it's important to remember that this is 4 years of your life, but it's really a small fraction of your life. And I think one great way is you need to have friends who are your same faith. You need to have friends who are your same faith, who are your same, not even in regards to being pro-life, not even your same faith, who believe that, human life is valuable and we should protect it. So surrounding yourself with those kind of people is a really good way. Educating yourself, that's what I found, because when I was in high school, none of my friends were pro-life. None of my friends were pro-life. But I educated myself on it, and I was able to talk about it and discuss it with people. And that was really helpful for me, because before I knew, all the logistics on it, all the laws, I felt kind of like, oh, I'm pro-life, but I don't really know what I'm talking about. So why should I even talk about it? Once you arm yourself with knowledge, arm yourself with education, and you will feel a lot more confident talking about it to your friends. And then also, having a prayer life is so important. The times when I've done the worst in this movement is when I haven't had a good prayer life. It is so important to have a good prayer life, have a good relationship with God, because ultimately He's the one who you should be looking for approval from.
It's so true. No, 100%. I agree with everything you said. And I'm not that, like, my main thing's Catholicism. But when I learned about, like, we went to a bunch of sidewalk counseling meetings and stuff and trained and things. And that helped me feel like, okay, now I can talk about this too. So classes are incredible. So I completely agree. Can you be pro-life and pro-gun?
This is a good one. Okay, of course you can. Yes, you can. The short answer is yes. My one of my friends, though, because I was talking to him about it, he gave me a good analogy. So I forgot to find it. Let me find the analogy.
No, you're good.
Because it was really good, and I want to share it.
This is why we need friends and connections.
Yeah, I was like, hey, can you give me a good? I was like, my first thought when I saw this question beforehand is, guys, guns don't kill people. People kill people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a slogan, but it's literally true. That's the short answer. That's like, say, anything can kill a person. It's not about that. It's about the person. And the reason we have, I could get all into this, but the reason we have a crisis with like school shootings and stuff like that is because people aren't pro-life. It's not because they have a gun. It's because they're not pro-life. Right. So his analogy was, I said, can you explain to me why you can be pro-life and pro-gun? He said, yeah, objects don't kill people. Vacuums don't kill people. People who use vacuums to rip live babies out of mothers' wombs kill people. It's true. It's like I really think that, and I'm probably more pro-gun than a lot, probably you too, Amber. There's a lot of people in the pro-life community, the Christian community, who are kind of just like neutral on guns. Because I'm so like conservative and involved in that movement, I understand that like I want the right to protect myself. I want to have, we do have the right under the Second Amendment to protect ourselves. I have the right to own a gun,
Well, yeah, but plus you're a small woman, like you're petite, like me, we're both small.
And so I really think that you should be pro-gun to be pro-life. It is pro-life to be pro-gun. You're going to be protecting your family. You're going to be protecting yourself, protecting innocent people around you. So I think this whole argument that you can't be pro-life and pro-gun should be flipped the other way, should be like, no, you should be pro-gun to be pro-life. So that's what I would say.
I agree. No, I completely agree. What are some good pro-life accounts to follow?
Oh, there are so many. Live Action is probably my favorite. It's just at liveaction.org on Instagram, and I think basically the same on the other channels. Students for Life is a great one. If you're in Illinois Right to Life, I've been loving their content lately. I really have been. So that's a good one. My account is at sav.speakslife, and I tend to share a lot of like other pro-life accounts, so you'll be able to find a lot of other pro-life accounts from that one. Yeah. If you're looking for like fashion, Culture of Life Fashion, they give back to crisis pregnancy centers. They're a great account to follow. But once you follow some of those accounts, you'll kind of like, they'll share other people's accounts and you'll kind of get into the other accounts.
Perfect. Yeah. I follow a ton of pro-life accounts, and I think most of them I've gotten from your channel. So I'm just like, oh,
I like to share other people's stuff, and then like other people share stuff too. And then you kind of just get all the accounts to follow.
You create, a little community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How can men respond to "it's a woman's issue"?
I love this one and honestly, men have been loving this lately too, because
they need to get more involved.
Honestly, okay, the thing is, we kind of screwed up a little bit as a pro-life movement initially, because we basically said without saying it that it's a women's issue. We said women need to be the face of it. It's all about women, right? Well, if we actually believe that it's a human rights issue, it's not a woman's issue. It's a human rights issue. So we need to act like that. Women and men in the pro-life movement. It's a human rights issue. Humans are being killed. Everyone needs to be involved. That's what I would say. Also, it takes two to make a baby, Just because it's in the woman's body doesn't mean she's the one who created it. Men need to be more involved for sure. And also, I would say, if I was going to get into talking to this person about this a little bit more, I would say, actually, like, abortion benefits men. So for men to step up is even greater, because abortion is a tool of the patriarchy, because it's, it can be used as a tool of the patriarchy, because when a man only has to pay $400, $500 for an abortion, like at the most, like, when he only has to pay that amount compared to thousands and thousands of dollars and dozens of years paying child support, it's an easy answer, right? It's the easy out for the man. It causes sex without commitment. It causes men to be absolute scumbags and leave women in the dust. Either paying for or not paying for this horrific procedure, not having to pay child support. It literally just deletes all responsibility that men have. So men need to be very much more involved. It's a human rights issue, not a women's issue.
I agree 100%. So then how do we get more men involved?
Oh, this is a good one. I think that organizations I guess I work for Live Action, so I guess I'll just tout Live Action, is doing a really good job of it. I think that men inherently want to be involved, but they think that their place isn't in the public sphere, So, okay, if you don't think that your place is, on the sidewalks talking to women going in, then you can do the research. You can be the manpower when we have these rallies. We have so many men on the Live Action team, Don't think that because you're not a woman doesn't mean that you can't work for a pro-life organization. It just might look a little different. If you don't want to be behind the camera, or if you don't want to be in front of the camera, you can be the one. We need people to help us put up stages, to help us carry large equipment, to help us with all the logistics of traveling. But the other thing that I will say about this is that the men that I have met who do crisis pregnancy counseling on the sidewalk, I haven't met a whole ton, but I do know some. They say they have a huge success rate, and that's because women look to men. Like, it's just in our being as a woman. Women look to men for safety, for comfort, we look to men and we just automatically think that they have authority. Like, it's just, I'm not trying to be like,
it's just human nature.
It's literally just human nature. So, I would say men's place is on the sidewalk, women's place is too, but men should be doing that, because if woman sees a, nice looking young man say, hey, I can help you get help, she's going to want that, because likely her boyfriend has abandoned her, that's what she's looking for, is help in that way. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've seen so many women change their minds when they talk to a pro-life man, because they're looking for that stability. They're looking for someone who's willing to help, who's a man, you know? So yeah, completely agree. What are some misconceptions about the pro-life movement?
Oh my gosh, there's so many.
What are like the most basic, like common ones?
Saying that we're only pro-birth, which is honestly such a dumb thing, because it's like, okay, yes, we're pro getting the baby to be alive at birth. Like, we'd rather not have a dead baby. Yes, we're pro-birth. We're pro infants being born alive. Of course we are. But, you know, it also just shows the naivety of people and the fact that they probably haven't looked into a lot. Let them live helps women and their children like up to a year after birth. They are not just pro-birth. But the other thing about that argument is it's putting a whole child's life on the hands of the pro-life movement. We never said that we're trying to, you know, that we're trying to make it so that like parents don't have any responsibility. All we're trying to do is to make it so that children are alive. Like that, it is true. That's all we're trying to do. We can't, any movement that started like cherry picking and taking on all these other issues hasn't been successful. The slavery movement was about banning slavery. The pro-life movement is about banning abortion. That is what we are about. So saying that we're just pro-birth basically implies that, you know, that we don't care about anything besides like the child coming out of the birth canal. No, it doesn't. We care about the health of the mother. Their mental health goes down the drain after abortions. Their physical health often goes down the drain. But the fact is, we do want children to be born. So if that's what pro-birth is, then that's what pro-birth is. And maybe just one other one. What is another misconception of the pro-life movement? I guess that it's all white men, you know, and it's all men. I thought that this was kind of like that we had kind of like gotten over this, but I was seeing like videos about it the other day, you know, that, oh, if abortion was up to, or if men could get pregnant, then abortion would be legal. Men would be getting abortions every day. It's like, look at the leaders in the pro-life movement, guys. Like, look at anybody. It's women, you know, it's women primarily leading this movement. It is not a man's movement.
But look who the people are pushing the pro-choice movement. They're all men.
Right. Men should be more involved. But exactly, like Amber said, look at the people who are pushing the pro-choice movement. It's men trying to control women. Like, isn't this kind of what, you know, shouldn't women be angry about this? All women? So that's what I would say. No, I completely agree. Yeah, it's so crazy how backwards it is. It really is. How do you go about explaining your faith to people who don't believe in God to begin with? I personally always start with my testimony, because nobody can deny your own testimony. So if somebody does not believe in God, I can still tell them my testimony and my personal experience, because even if they don't believe in God, it's still my experience, right? Right. And then usually, and there's also like a lot of different apologetic ways to go about it. But for me, I like to win the person, you know, by starting that friendship first over just being like, well, God exists because blah, 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 blah. It's just like, you want to win the soul, not the argument. So you might have to play the long game with them. But for me, I always start with my personal experiences. And then from there, if they start asking questions, I usually answer questions. Catholic Answers is a great resource if you have someone asking you questions about Catholicism. Yeah, no, that's really good. That's really good. I don't have any like huge testimony like Amber's that I start with. And I much more just kind of go with like, you really think that like everything in this earth was just like, just happened, you know? It's just like, I kind of go with that whole like logic, like science doesn't back that up. Science doesn't back up the fact that the earth just exploded and this all came to be. And I also just kind of like talk to them about how like, you know, most people get to a point where they say there is a higher power, you know, there has to be a higher power, you know, there has to be a reason for like living your life. There hasn't. So once you kind of begin that conversation, I really do think, and I was even talking to my mom about that the other day, I really do think that once you begin that conversation, once a person starts researching, it ultimately leads to Catholicism. Like it always does. So just start asking those questions. I would just say, in regards to people who don't believe in God, start asking questions. You know, that's a great place. 100% questions is one of the best ways to communicate with people and really understand their worldview, you know.
How do you handle pushback from pro-abortion activists?
Yeah, it's changed for me over the years. I like to use a lot more sort of satire now, probably ever since I started working for live action. But because, I think that especially now in our culture, they've gotten so radical that when you kind of just say back to them what they're saying, but in like a radical way, they'll be like, "Oh, that doesn't sound right. Like that's not what
Right.
I want to be saying. That's not what I believe." We put out a lot of satirical videos this past year. We did some pro-choice bosses ones about companies who wanted to force their employees to get abortion.
I saw those. This so funny.
But I think the best way to kind of just approach it, especially in our world, is like, so there's people who aren't human, or there's human who aren't people. Does pregnancy make a woman just like not a woman anymore? Like, is she something else? You know what I mean? Just saying all those radical questions, and then they're just like, oh, like that's kind of dumb, So that's kind of what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to like reword it to fit their narrative. But yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Savannah, for hopping on here and talking to us.
Thanks for having me, Amber.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got to connect again because I think, I was thinking about this yesterday. There's something, you travel all over and I travel all over and we talk to people around the world about our causes and all this stuff. But it's fun to just kind of go back to like
the basics.
Where we kind of started, like to get to chat with each other about, where we've come, how far we've come, and then like what we're doing currently and what our movements are looking like. So of course,
100%.
I'm happy to be on.
Yes, and we're going to do more of these in the future, so stay tuned, peoples. But yeah, and then Savannah, where can people find you?
So my Instagram is @sav.speakslife, and you can kind of just find everything from there.
Okay, I'll put it in the description too, so people can find it more easily. But yeah, thank you so much again. We're going to do more of these now that like everything's kind of settled down over the last year and stuff. But I really appreciate you guys coming on and for everybody watching. And with all of that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And don't forget to check out my website at thereligioushippie.com. You can find economy rosaries, haters will be prayed for prayer journals, some St. Jude mugs. And with all of that being said, I will talk to you guys in the next video. All right. Or podcast. Depends on which one. All right. Bye, guys. Hi, everyone. If you have any advertising inquiries, I am pleased to offer the opportunity to promote your content on my channel. For detailed information regarding pricing, ad length, and other relevant details, please reach out to my manager, Anthony, at anthony@crowninternational.us.
Brooks Running has a new shoe for you runners out there. Did you hear that? Better turn up your volume. In fact, turn it up to the max. Introducing the all-new Ghost Max. It's got all kinds of things to make your knees and ankles feel protected, like Max Cushion, Max Soft Landings with DNA Loft V2 foam, and Max Smooth Rides with their Glide Roll Rocker. Feel better on your run with Ghost Max. Learn more at brooksrunning.com.
Thank you so much for listening to A Catholic's Perspective with me, The Religious Hippie. Make sure to visit my official website at thereligioushippie.com, and while you're there, be sure to sign up for my newsletter to keep up to date with my latest news and offerings. You can also find me on virtually any social media site as The Religious Hippie. Thanks for listening.
A quest is a search for something. And every week, the Quest podcast will show you how we know what we know through interviews with people that have incredible stories of dedication and perseverance. I'm your host, Todd Fisher. Join me in this thought-provoking and inspiring podcast of discovery. Find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Todd Fisher and Anthony Smith and is distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure and visit the official website for Metacortex Publishing at metacortexpublishing.com or find us on social media for other unique content.